Hi, I'm Scout.
Jeremiah, nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you too. All right, so my first question for you is going to be, what do you think are the most common misconceptions about being trans?
Common misconceptions. I think the most common misconception that folks have about trans people is that they can identify trans people. For me, I think that like a lot of times when I introduce myself or someone finds out that I'm trans, they're usually surprised or they don't expect that. Or they think that like I'm transitioning from a man to a woman and that I'm just starting this journey as opposed to someone who has identified female at birth and then now live my life as a trans man. Mm-hmm. And so I definitely think that not knowing that trans people are among us every day is one of the biggest misconceptions that folks have.
What are some of the most annoying questions that you get?
Annoying questions. I definitely think any question about bodies that that's not something that you would ever ask a normal person about their bodies. That is one of the biggest things that I'm just like, wow, seriously, so that's never something you would ask a normal person. You don't introduce yourselves with your genitals, and so definitely
that would be a very different world.
Yes, and surprisingly people do it all the time. So
I mean, I can only imagine how incredibly insulting that would be, that you are somehow reduced to your genitalia.
Body part or surgeries that like people always want to know about. Mm-hmm. Like, have you had the surgery, as if there's like a certain type of surgery that like trans people have to have or something like that. So definitely annoying, definitely degrading, and something that I would suggest people never do.
Yes. What was that kind of process for you, or what was that feeling? Like, how did you know? You know what I mean?
Yeah. So for myself, I didn't know that I was trans until kind of I knew, and I came out when I was 27 years old. I'm 30 now, and so I came out when I was 27. And I think that I just always knew that I was different. So like growing up, I was like what people would consider a tomboy. I loved sports and was dressed like a tomboy. And then I got made fun of a lot. And so when I was in middle school, I got made fun of a lot. So I just automatically switched to like being very feminine. So like whatever people thought like a woman in society said femininity should be, I was like, I'm gonna be that. And so I had long hair and I wore makeup, dated guys, but I always just knew that there was something wrong. And so it wasn't until I was like 25, 26 that I met a girl and I was like really attracted to her, and I was like, oh, I'm lesbian. And so I came out. At first I thought I was just a lesbian, and I came out, and there was just something that still just wasn't right. I started dressing more masculine again, cut off my hair, and I met another person who identified as a transgender man, and he was kind of like telling me about his life story and about how he came out, and there was just something that was so familiar about what he was saying. And I was just like, oh my gosh, like this was me. And I think that like I never had the language, like I didn't know trans people existed. I myself also thought that like maybe trans people were just trans women, that were people who were born male and then lived their lives as women. I thought that that was the only type of trans that existed. And so when I found out this person was trans and kind of heard their story, I was like, this is me. Like this, it was me. Like their story was basically how I felt in myself and everything like that. And so I came out then at 27. It was a short process. It was weird because I'd already been married before to a man. I had 3 children, and I was what people would consider like a conservative Christian woman, and so like coming out and then living, now as like a man, changing my names and pronouns and starting hormones and all that stuff was definitely a huge transition for people in my life. But I've never felt more like me ever besides now.
That's incredible. And I mean, the process of it wasn't so simple of just like kind of waking up and realizing that that's, I mean, even for me, I've never even thought about how many different complications there could be just to discovering what's true about yourself. I think that it can be something that's so kind of confusing to people, because when you're born, I guess, or when you're kind of taught from a very young age that like this is who you are, and it's kind of you're growing into the person that you're meant to be, but having all of these different complications and different ideas being put into your brain, or different people you're meeting or falling in love with, and different labels that you're supposed to be falling into. I mean, that's an incredible journey.
Yeah, because I think that like when people are born, there's kind of like, it's like an unsaid expectation. Like, you know, that there's an expectation that because you are assigned female that you will like pink, and you like to play with Barbies and all these things. And like to kind of deviate outside of that expectation is definitely, I think, it's hard, but and especially when it seems like maybe this is wrong. Like, is this wrong? And you have everyone around you telling you all these ideas about who they expect you to be. And so sometimes it's just a lot easier to like be what other people want you to be. But yeah, so definitely after I was able to just like get through that and like be who I am, it was like, wow. Like, that's different. So,
that's incredible. That's such an amazing story. For kids or teenagers that are questioning or not really sure what or who they are or anything like that, or are struggling with any identity crisis, what would be one piece of advice that you could give?
Yeah, so my biggest pieces of advice is to just believe yourself, to like know that who you are and who you think you are is okay, and that things might not seem like they're going the way that you thought they were going to go, but that everything will be okay. I think that that's one of the things that I wish people would have told me when I was younger, is that like everything's going to be okay, and to trust yourself, and yeah.
That's some solid advice. All right. Well, thank you so much for answering all of my questions.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was nice meeting you.
Yeah, it was very nice meeting you too.